All right, we are live. So, welcome to round three of March Thursday Nighter. We're very lucky to have National Master OK back. Welcome, OK.
Hi guys.
Again, I'm just going to start with a couple announcements. So, first of all, we didn't quite get to the post game show we were hoping to last week. So, still submit your games to Connor if you're interested in post game show, but we might do it kind of a little bit more intermittently instead of every single week, as long as we can get time to record. So, we will still get to the games that were submitted, but just might be a little bit of a delay on that. I'm playing at the club on Wednesdays, so yeah, if anyone wants to come hang out on Wednesdays between 5 and 8, can meet me at the club. I played Eddie in a training game yesterday. He crushed me, so yeah, everyone's getting the best of me at the club. Makes sense when you spend your time commentating instead of playing. But definitely nice to meet you guys. And yeah, one more announcement. We're going to start doing the player profiles again. So we do have a new player profile this week of, we see the man himself on camera, Miles Tizerand. And so Miles is in the right there in the purple with the glasses. And he is a very strong player in our club. And so this is a fitting profile. He's playing on board two tonight against National Master Ethan Hunt. And yeah, we see here his rating history graph. So it's a little bit hard for me to see zoomed in here, but looks like he's peak of 21, 28. I'm seeing. So 2100 plus peak. And what I decided to showcase for, instead of his best tournament recently, I just decided to show the Thursday nighter overall results from last year and this year. And so we can see last year he won three different events, and he already has an event in the book this year with last month. So Miles is a very strong member of the club who is winning a lot of tournaments on Thursdays. Also wanted to showcase some of his best opponents. So yeah, we can see here in the 2200 range, he has a really strong record against Jordan Tim. So I think a lot of the state would be envious of a record like that against Jordan, and it also shows that Miles can definitely hang tactically. I see he has two games against OK here, a draw and a loss. So, OK, any commentary on your games with Miles?
Yeah. The first. So yeah, we played two games, and the first game he had the white pieces, and this was some years ago, I think, because he was still playing E4 then. I remember he was still playing E4 then. So this is before he perfected the art of the Queen's Indian on both sides of the board. Uh, but yes, it was a French hard fought game. The second game we drew, I already knew that he had improved some, and then he convinced me even further because at some point I was completely lost in our second game. I was playing the white pieces, and yeah, I was completely busted. It was a it was a topsy turvy game from beginning to end. So I knew, okay, not only has he improved in general, but he's not afraid to mix it up. And so we are, trying to toss here because each other. Eventually, I was able to turn the game around, and then I was completely winning. And it was my turn to now not get confused by the counterplay. So it ended up in, I think, a well-earned draw for both of us. Or you could put it the other way: we both should have lost, maybe. Um,
Well,
so
that no, it's a just result. Those are the best games when it goes both ways. And yeah, Miles definitely has a lot of games like that in this club, where it goes, the eval swings both ways. Both sides had chances to win, but a lot of times he does come out on the top of those games. I'd say he's pretty clutch, from just memory at least. But yeah, also wanted to highlight some other wins here. So he's actually got some lifetime results here. Again, a lifetime result here, I'd say, draw against Grandmaster Caden Trough. So that's pretty much as good as it gets. That's a true professional. And
yes,
I also wanted to highlight he's got some losses here against 2,700 players. So he's clearly playing on the top boards in some elite events, and he's going out nationally, finding really strong events to play in. Of course, that's going to benefit your game, and also get some really interesting opponents to play. I mean, I've never even played anyone close as strong as some of these players, so pretty cool to see his tournament history. And yeah, really happy to see him playing almost every month at the club now, and scary opponent for everyone, including Connor, who people are usually scared of Connor, but Connor at this point deserves to be a bit scared of Miles with their recent history. So it's becoming really competitive, and he makes it interesting. And so with that, I think maybe let's start with board two, just in tradition of you know checking out the game of the
Featuring the featured player.
exactly. We always talk a little bit more about the first game, anyways. So might as well talk a little bit more
Right.
about this one.
So we have Miles versus Ethan. Ethan's a solid player, and
Just so
he
everyone knows, by the way,
chooses.
I'm sorry about that, but these are their FIDE ratings, by the way. I know everyone sees these ratings. You know, the FIDE ratings come through automatically to the broadcast through the however that works, but USCF ratings are a lot different. So just wanted everyone to kind of note that.
And generally, in the post-COVID era, uh, I'd guess that the gap between people's USCF ratings and FIDE ratings are even larger than they were before. It's been a lot, especially for folks um, born after the year 2000 or before the year 2000. Um, the uh, with COVID, I suppose folks of a certain age range, got bitten by rating deflation, as lots of younger players were improving online and not playing over the board. And so it's FIDE tried to do something to sort of correct it, but it's still you're still having situations where you're playing against people that are the same FIDE rating as you, but maybe 100, 200 USCF rating points higher than you, right? Um, or
Yes.
even worse, their FIDE might be lower than yours, so then you're paired down to them per FIDE, but per USCF, you're playing up to them. It's
Yeah,
a very strange.
there's a ton of deflation in chess, I think. So that makes a ton of sense, and it's not just even at the club level. Even at that top level, guys that used to be 2,700 plus easy all the time are down in low 2,600s. It's hard to keep your rating for everyone nowadays. It is just so competitive, and the whole pool also has raised in skills. So yeah, if you're not studying
Mhm.
and continuing to kind of keep pace, right, the whole pool is getting better. So yeah, some people who made master 10, 15 years ago, if they are not studying now, they probably would have a lot of trouble even against some experts. So it's
Yeah.
just yeah, it's a competitive field, and it's kind of funny. The USCF kind of gets made fun of a little bit sometimes with their rating floors, but I think it's actually turned out to be a blessing in disguise because they got the rating floors to protect these big national tournaments that have big class prizes. Make sure there's no sandbagging that goes on to play in these big money sections. But with all this intense rating deflation, it's it's way more encouraging to play. So I think they make a lot of sense. So, but yeah, it's going to be interesting. Hopefully, they can figure out some stuff to combat deflation because yeah, it discourages people from playing. No one wants to feel like they're way worse than their peak, but a lot of times it's not that you got way worse. It's just everyone's getting better, and there is a lot
Yeah.
of deflation in the pool. But all right,
Well,
let's get into the game though.
all right. Well, As expected, we have Miles playing a Nimza Larson and Ethan responding with the kingside fianchetto. And I'll be light on the theory since I don't know it. Um,
Yeah,
but
me as well. I'm out of, I got man, I got to book up on Imza Larson though before I come back to play against Miles, man.
yes, especially since with his recent successes, I'll be surprised if he doesn't inspire other players to start playing this way.
But it's so positional.
So
It's probably tough to prepare against in a general sense. I mean, it's like preparing against the Catalan, I guess. You can try, but it just takes a lot of experience more than like coming up with this one cool trick or something.
yeah, you're not going to come up with one cool trick to refute the Nimzo Larsen. It's not going to happen. If you set your aims more appropriately, namely, I want to get a playable position that I enjoy, you can do that. But if you're trying to win out of the opening as the Nimzo Larsen, uh, then you've just found the secret sauce to being eternally frustrated. It's not going to happen. So here, that's an interesting move. And let's try and figure out what Ethan is intending. Maybe it's just as simple as try to get to f4. And so Miles prevents it. Ethan reinforces the idea. And then knight c3.
So
Okay, so we've got some. Yeah.
one question, did I wonder if this is a scenario where he really had to prevent that or not? Because I feel like Bishop D3 is already kind of staring at light square pawn chain, on G6 H7 a bit, and maybe we could just move Rook E1, and then if he plays Knight F4, just say play Bishop F1, and say your knight's a little,
So going back here, right?
yeah, yeah.
And then play rook e1.
hmm I just don't know why
Yes,
won't you
I
just
think
prevent that idea.
it's a valid idea. However, I mean, in order to save the bishop, uh, maybe one problem is it might be unnecessarily passive. In other words, so you go here, you save your bishop with bishop f1, and then you have to start wondering what you're going to do after, say, bishop f5 or bishop g4. And it's not as if black is winning or anything, but black's pieces are beginning to look a bit more active, and it's possible Miles didn't want to make developing this bishop so easy. So there's
Yeah,
that, or maybe bishop g4,
yeah. There's a lot of pressure on D4, so
and so
makes sense.
so rather than retreat everything, let's try and keep black from doing what he wants to do. This promote. So here and there. It's beginning
See,
to.
I got another question there with Queen D6 because I feel like this might be over optimistic, but you got knight B1's looking bad a little bit. It's only got knight C3 to develop now, right? And then yeah, of course you're gonna play A6, so you can't play knight B5 or whatever. But maybe I would think to myself, well, I know he's gonna play knight C3 no matter what. I don't really. Maybe can I make it so I don't care if he plays knight B5? Because then I don't have to waste a tempo on A6. So I mean, because as soon as you play Queen D6, now it's when he plays Knight C3, you have to play A6. Otherwise, Knight B5 is just going to tempo the Queen. So I just wonder if there's anything we could do. I guess it's harder to develop the Queen, hard to develop the Bishop. But anyways, that's just my line of thought. Is like, is there any way we can get away with not playing A6?
Uh, You probably could get away without playing a6, um, but I don't know that you want to. I mean, a6 is actually not bad for black. If black wants to maintain pressure on the d4 pawn, he wants to leave the knight there, and a6 prevents the light square bishop of white from getting to b5,
Mm-hmm.
which is often a theme in these kind of positions. I mean, right now, as you pointed out, the bishop on d3 is looking at a brick wall of black pawns, g6, h7, and so he might want to say, "Well, I'll give up my bishop for the knight." A6 prevents that, and so it actually may not be the worst thing in the world to allow that setup. Um,
Makes sense.
and this is with the idea that black is trying to be consistent in enforcing knight f4. Oops. Okay, here we go. So then there, and so black is taking care of, he's gotten his minors developed somehow, and the the knight on h5 looks kind of funny, but white is also inconveniencing himself because of that knight. So I won't call it bad just yet, as long as it can get back home if it needs to. And yeah, I can imagine most folks who specialize in kingside fianchetto defenses as black would be very happy to get this move in. Automatically, the bishop on g7 is going to be feeling a lot happier. And of course, white can't just, it's difficult for white to just ignore the pawn break. So he feels compelled to respond. The downside, if there is one, is the IQP. But I don't think it's going to be that easy for
Well,
white to take advantage of it just yet.
well,
Especially since black still has, yeah.
he chopped the knight there, but I also feel like he is improving white's bishop a lot too, a little bit. So it has to be a little bit
You mean the bishop on d3 or the bishop
on
on b2?
bishop on b2. Because he's
So
releasing that tension for that bishop too. He was staring at his own pawn.
which would be correct in general if he wasn't also forcing white to make a decision about which bishop he wants to leave on the board.
Yeah,
Because with the way the sequence went, after capturing with the knight, one of those bishops is leaving the board. So Ethan's forced Miles to make an important decision here. Do you just move the queen, allowing knight takes d3? Which actually, I'm not even sure you can do that comfortably. Um, let's see. Where's the queen? So where does the queen even have a good escape? Say if queen e3 were to happen, let's see, knight d3.
knight g4 maybe is a threat,
Oh, knight g4 is actually um, a thing as well.
and you're threatening mate and the queen. That's
Yes.
a lot of threats. But yeah, no, okay. I'm not saying it's possible, but
Mhm.
on principle, I do disagree with giving up the dark square bishop. I feel like if you have your choice tactically, give up the light square bishop in this
Mhm.
situation because what are we about to be left with? An IQP, and what are the dynamics to the IQP? If you have the IQP, you want to attack, and if you're playing against the IQP, you want to trade pieces, get into an end game, and try to win that pawn, right? So
Mhm.
if black wants to attack, would they rather have opposite colored bishops or same colored bishops? Probably opposite colored. So you're basically trading into opposite color bishops, which favor the attacker in a position with an IQP that tells your opponent you need to attack. So yeah, it's gonna be potentially. I would not be surprised if at some point Black now gets some activity against this king because opposite color
Yes.
bishops.
Besides the fact that he's losing a pawn by almost by force
Yeah,
because he took bishop takes e5. So the question actually is, at this point, um, did White have any better options at this point? And then after capturing here, is there a good retreat square for the queen?
mm-hmm. The knights control so much, so it's
Yeah,
tough.
I mean, for example, if queen comes here, then I believe this is actually bothersome. Maybe, yeah, this is actually bothersome because if you try for knight and try to defend the bishop with this, then knight e2, and it'll be an early dinner.
We've got Bob in the chat, who's a regular Wednesday player, and
Hmm.
he's a speed demon. Loves one plus zero, or I mean, 1 minute chess.
Oh wow!
Yeah, yeah. I can't keep up with him, but thanks for viewing, and thanks for playing on
See, after
Wednesdays.
this, there's a tactical deficiency because the h2 pawn is going to go, which should only help Ethan further, right? Bishop of opposite colors and a weakened king. The pawn, the pawn extra is just gravy. Oh, this is interesting. So here, and check. So this is actually
Okay, did he did
not
he,
completely clear.
did he have to trade queens there? That was looking like a lot of activity against the king.
Yeah, let's see if there are other options because
I mean, knight g3, knight e2 controls g3, which is pretty nice. But you do see one, two, three pieces attacking there, just the queen defending the knight indirectly.
hmm
Um, I don't know, but probably
yeah, I
nothing.
can't find yeah, I can't find anything. I can't find any great alternative
But
right now.
knight e2 is hanging. Could we attack that somehow? I don't know.
Uh,
With queen,
there
not
doesn't
really.
seem to be a square. Yeah, there's not really a square where we can attack
And
the.
queen e7, maybe they would just play rook e1 or something.
Oh, actually, yeah, Queen e7 might be one way to avoid the exchanges.
I'm extra knight e2.
Uh,
That's why I kind of like to retreat there.
yes. Yeah, Queen takes h3 gets felt a bit cooperative. I mean, even if you
Yeah,
don't have a forced win, it just seems like the fact that your queen's still on the board, White will have to tread very carefully.
but maybe these rooks are active too, or like rook fe1. Both white's rooks are looking a lot better than black's rooks. So it's just an interesting position. Hard to evaluate.
Yes, it is hard to evaluate. I think, um, yeah, this is,
I mean, queen c5 maybe hits f2 and c2.
Yeah.
But my bishop's a little loose. That's probably dangerous.
Bishop's a bit loose. The bishop, the pawn on b7 is then hanging. So maybe Ethan decided his chances were better in this endgame, where the material equal, but his white's kingside pawns are split. Maybe there's a small theoretical edge there, but I don't.
Yeah, looks dangerous. I can see trading queens. And that's the thing too is we're looking at these positions with a glance, and they're calculating these lines, looking at these dangers. So,
Yeah,
but just wanted to
there's a neat
conjecture.
thing here. I think um, Miles was hoping maybe for this, but I don't. Yeah, I think that was the idea as it is, but then I don't know if this is not saving the bishop. So the idea is to try and trap the bishop in there
Yep.
after. So um, if here instead, then probably b4, intending rook b3 to trap the bishop.
Okay. With a5, c3, what's next?
Yeah, so let's see what's going on there. So a5, c3, pawn takes, pawn takes, and maybe rook here to try and rescue the bishop.
But how so? Can't you
Although
play?
his piece,
Can't you play rook
huh?
b3 or rook d3?
So if you play, I think rook d3 might be the way. Yeah, rook d3 might be the way. So then it's not even saved yet. Yeah, rook b3 would allow this. This is what I was looking at, was
Ah,
to allow the bishop to escape that way. But rook d3, and looks like that's all she wrote. Um, so yeah, so Ethan wisely withdrew his bishop. I just wanted to point that out, that there's a reason why he didn't take the pawn. I guess it seemed like it was going to be too much. The pawn would be difficult to digest, even if and worst case scenario, White could even just get the pawn back immediately
mm-hmm.
with this. But I think playing d4 is more to the point. So let's see. We're now chopping down wood, and all right.
You
Between
bet.
players of the strength, I'd imagine a draw is a likely outcome, but not the only outcome, because
Yeah.
there's still weaknesses, and White's pieces are suddenly pretty active. The knight on g7, I think there was a previous game where I was discussing the difficulties of maintaining a fianchettoed knight. Um, the knight on g7 needs to join the party at some point, I think, if he's given the chance. Because right now it seems like White has a definite initiative. So
Yeah,
let's
and
see, where do you go next? Yeah.
it's also interesting that just as an observer, I feel like you know Ethan's almost offering a tacit draw with rook d8, saying, "Let's trade rooks. I want to get to opposite color bishop ending. Let's. I mean, maybe a little bit more to play here, but if you're sitting there like I want to beat this guy, you're probably not wanting to trade rooks." And then Miles by saying no, I don't want that rook trade. Miles is kind of saying I'm playing for a win. So
Mm-hmm.
not saying that not saying the psychological factors matter that much, especially at this level, but that's just kind of the general thing I'm getting from the current game state is that Ethan would be happy with the draw and Miles is kind of pressing a little bit.
No, I think the psychological factor in this position in this game is actually very significant. You can't imagine how demoralizing it can be if you're playing to stay within the safety range of a draw, and your opponent is letting you know, no, you've got to work for this, right? Even if you, and it's worse still if you think the position is even, which superficially you might say, oh, this position seems even-ish. In fact, shouldn't white be avoiding going into the end game because of his split kingside pawns? But there's a very important factor. His pieces are doing more work. They're earning their keep more so than black's pieces. So he has every reason, every justification for continuing to needle black. And if black defends everything, then he's earned his draw. But a friend of mine from Turkey would often say there will be, like, just like fine wine, there'll be no draws before their time. So so
Yeah,
there.
and knight g7 is looking awkward to me. I mean, you can imagine if the rook moves about off the back rank, you could almost get back ranked if the bishop wasn't supporting the rook from jumping back.
Yes.
I mean, knight f6 looks a little scary, even though the bishop's controlling it. And then, yeah, I'm also seeing just, this knight and bishop are doing a great job controlling all the entrance squares on the d file. What black can maybe play rook d4, but then the knight's already protected. So what?
There is an interesting possibility of 96, but I don't know that it's working.
Yeah, that makes sense. You got to fix that
Next,
knight. What's that knight doing?
yeah,
The rook's doing okay at least. At least it's on an open file. Maybe the squares are controlled, but the knight is kind of not only not active, it's like preventing your kingside left. So
in fact, there's another possibility of playing f5 first. Well, we need to make sure we're not weakening our king too much, but f5 and then 96.
yeah,
Or f5 and rook d6 and then knight e6.
I'd be very,
So if I may put it on the board,
yeah, I'd be scared with this. Pawn's don't
right,
move
and
backwards, and my
then
king's a little trapped now.
yes. So it's very risky. Like, I just noticed after making the move that now 96 is not looking that palatable. Uh, and in fact, I think I just speeded up Black's demise here after something like this. And
Because that rook's already on the seventh, and then you're weakening the seventh rank a little more. I'd be a little
yeah, this
nervous about that
seems like
too.
harakiri. This is horrible. So that's not working. Um, and this, uh, yeah, not good. So, all right. So the f5 is a bit too ambitious, it would appear. Knight e6 immediately had. Let's see. Let's take a look at that for a second. Rook here, here. This just seems very scary to allow white to just clear up the queen side like that, though. And so, do you play the only way at the moment it seems to defend the pawn might be b5, but then rook b6 is possible, or even knight c5.
Looking good for white to me.
Yeah, yeah. White seems to be in control in this one, and so I think Ethan's think here appears justified. Now, it is in the live game. We're still waiting for Ethan's move right now. Is that correct?
It's actually miles to play. I can see on camera.
So why am I stuck? It seems like I'm stuck at rook b7.
Yeah, maybe just switch games, switch back to it. That sometimes helps.
Okay. So maybe we'll quickly go to. Oh wow. Um, Mr. Stanky.
Uh,
Mr. Stanky versus Robert Donahue.
wow, looks like a shock tactic at the end.
Yeah, the final position
X
looks like some puzzle.
X-ray rook c3.
Almost.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So let's see how we got there. So we start off with e4, e4, c6, so a Karo Khan. And
The wing
Robert says, no, you Karo can't. We're
wing
not playing
gambit.
that game.
Wing gam. Yeah. Did you? He mouse slipped the caro. He meant to play Sicilian, and Robert had a wing gambit prepared, but he's like, you know what?
Ah,
You know
okay,
what?
very nice.
I'm gonna play wing gambit anyways because that's what I had in my mind. It's just my guess. Oh yeah,
So this
here's
is,
last week. Listen to this, Robert, Eddie. I got this debrief from Eddie. He said last week Robert had a goal to make no pawn chains. He had a pregame goal. So I'm not sure if Robert's playing with a self-induced handicap every week or not. But no pawn chains is not exactly, um, you know,
yeah.
pawn chains are, you want the biggest pawn chains possible. But so
Yeah, that seems like an interesting life goal for a chess game. Uh, this is
it's like
or unorthodox, to put it mildly.
okay. So but how is it kind of okay? So now we're getting towards the end of the opening, and how is it? It seems to kind of have worked out. I don't.
Uh, I don't, I don't like this for black for white.
No pieces
I
sacked yet
think
though. You know.
true, true. The material's equal, so that's a plus. But this position does not. White's king is just so open. It seems like there must be some way to punish him.
Yep, already getting a lot of heavy pieces pointed at that king.
Yep, and already a mate threat.
Yeah. If
Um,
if your opponent can threaten mate, this is just a reality of chess. If your opponent can threaten mate in one, like something has gone wrong. You know,
yes,
if you
on move 12
yeah, I'm move 12.
with the black pieces.
Really, any time in the game, I'm never come even if it's just like a spite threat. I'm like, well,
Mhm.
I let his pieces get active enough to make a mate threat. So that's only one like lever switch away from a forced win.
Yeah, so we don't want that to happen. Uh, okay, yeah, I'm not digging White's position here. It seems like,
They've got a big open bishop pair. You got to find the bright sides.
yeah, but both sides have a bishop pair, so
Yeah,
it's
he's trying to. I think. Do you think he was worried about d4 there, trying to keep it active, or
yes, yeah. I think he didn't want his bishop locked inside. The problem, though, and it's not easy to figure out. I mean, you have to do some analysis of the board and use some judgment. In this position, is the bishop better? Because d4 is probably happening at some moment, right? By black, maybe followed by c4. But at least initially, white is wants to keep his pieces active, and that's why he's playing bishop e5 to avoid bishop being blocked in. However, with his king being the more exposed, maybe it's better to keep the bishop at home to protect the king. We don't know how the game's going to go, but it just seems like that might be something I'd be considering. Is um, I'll accept my bishop being passive if it's passively helping my king to survive.
now here's a move. instead of f4, a move I would consider that I know Robert would never consider is maybe queen
Hmm.
a6. Just saying I know this is going bad,
Well,
and I know you're gonna get at my king. So, let me take the
queen a6 is actually pretty good. I mean, you'll probably lose a pawn, but maybe you're not getting mated immediately. Because so to give you an idea what I was talking about, so here, 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 and then here, and um, the forward a pawn is probably not long for this world.
yes, and that's my sacrifice to
Yes.
the gods saying I know I did wrong in this game, and I just don't
Yes.
want to get checkmated. So uh, let me try to win this end game. I mean, not try to win, but let me try to draw this end game. And
Yes.
just switch to diffuse the pressure mode. But maybe I'm overestimating my defensive end game skills a bit much, and it's going to lead to long suffering anyways. But
No, the pawns in the greater center are doing a great job, and that's why I one of the reasons I was concerned about this queenside castling is that uh, he's castling into it. It's like black's pieces are ready to party on the queen side, and then you bring your king there.
yeah, queenside castling in general is risky in chess for white, especially. Because here's the thing you can do in chess, especially as you get stronger. You can play for two result games where you take no risks and you play for a win anyways, because with some extra space. But as soon as you castle queenside, the game almost always turns into three result games, which means black also has good chances to win. And in reality, at club level, all the games are three result games, so it's not like it really matters that much. But you know, especially if you're a higher rated player, like you're 300 points higher rated, castling queenside as white is a little bit risky. If it's your repertoire, it's great, and you can lead to some huge kingside attacks. But it is turning into that race position. It is, you may be a much better calculator than your opponent, but it doesn't take amazing calculation to throw your pawns and try to make the other opponent, try to play the most active moves possible to make the opponent king. And sometimes even if you're a weaker player, you can get lucky and you can just play active moves, and eventually there's a forced win there, and maybe you find it. But
Yeah,
hey, I guess that's why we play
I
chess.
mean, with exactly. No, Robert's trying to create some play, so that's admirable. Um, and fortunately for Daniel, the queen is covering f6, so it's helping both with the attack and defense. Okay, so he wants to play a6, open a line towards white's king.
Makes sense.
So
He's preparing
Robert,
for
Robert, huh?
maybe preparing a4.
Actually, he could be preparing a4, but you should also pay attention to the fact that there's now a battery
Yeah,
of queen on
knight h6,
c2 and bishop on b1,
bishop
and the
f6, knight
knight on
h6, or
f6.
yeah,
Yep.
or knight e7
So
maybe. Yeah, he
so
sees it.
g6 seemed necessary, yeah. And whoa.
But because now maybe he can threaten bishop f5 though.
Well, bishop f5,
But yeah, I
the
guess
knight on
knight
h4.
yeah. If we can ever move the knight in h4, I guess.
Yes. But right now he's threatening 93, among other things. There's 93, there's knight h2, but knight h2 is just um, not worth looking at. But 93, the question becomes well, at this moment, 93 probably isn't working because of rook takes e3, and then the bishop on d7 is hanging.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Oh,
oh,
I don't see. What about rook d3 here instead? Because I mean, I want to play rook g3, organize some sacks on g6 maybe. I guess he's got queen on b6 too, unfortunately. But how else am I gonna get to white's king? I mean black's king.
So is G H3 G4 possible?
Mm-hmm. It's a follow.
And start moving things that way?
But why wouldn't you jump into e? Oh, because of the bishop. Got it.
Into E3? Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I was
yeah.
pointing out
So then,
earlier that um yeah, so if here and here now we can get two pieces for the rook, it appears. Um
mm-hmm.
and white should be fine here, but he's threatening to bring the bishop back, bring his queen to the long diagonal, maybe F5 adds more firepower to the attack, and so all of a sudden, white seems to have the better chances after that, which is why I think we can take the time to kick that intruder back while gaining time to get our pawns into the mix. The usual principle in these opposite side castling positions is get there the fastest with the mostest, to borrow from it was a Union general back in the day. Um, so yeah, I think yeah, I'm not.
Well, also I wonder about just f5. I guess we got the bishop hanging. So I'm just
Well,
yeah.
F5 at this moment probably is ill-timed because of this.
Yes.
So
Not only mate in one, but also hanging your bishop in one move. So yeah, I'm just trying to figure out. Is there anything white? Is there any ideas white has to hope for, and without seeing my opponent's threats at all for either side? But
it's not very tough. I can't really explain King B2. It seems like you hear the lion's roar, so you run towards it in a way, you know. The
yeah, no,
king,
that makes no sense at all. Because yeah, look, we're getting mate in one threats now.
yeah,
Okay, now the queen has to babysit a3.
and
But what about queen a? And we even have queen
queen
a1 threat.
A1.
Yeah,
So now we're looking is D6 a thing? Sorry, D3 a thing? Not yet appeared. Oh, actually D3 no, because the bishop can go to D can capture. Is F6 a thing? Um, hmm.
maybe we can
Or
get.
maybe you take queen A1 as a game win. So I was looking at this as a possibility, and then um, I think this is still not working properly.
Well, I
Queen A1, yeah.
I like taking twice on e5 just because I'm gonna get bishop h6 activity.
Oh, so
Well, or if the pawn moves right
here.
away, great. If he plays rook takes first, I'll also trade rooks but my main goal is to open that diagonal.
Oh, okay. Actually, okay, so queen B3. Because I was looking to see if no, that's too weakening. I was looking at a G5 move to unmoor the pawn on F4, but now we're weakening our king just as much as his weakened. Let's see what Daniel played. So um, Queen A1, King C1, Rook A3. Okay,
Yeah, this looks good.
yeah, that seems convincing. Kaboom.
Okay, and
And
king g2, and what's the last? He resigned there, right? But What
He
if
resigns
what if he
here.
plays king d2?
So if king d2 happens, now the queen's unprotected, so we can capture
Oh,
that.
okay, yes, man.
Um, and so bishop c2 would be nice if it were
Dane's.
legal.
Yep. Okay, so that's all she wrote.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Wow.
actually, that makes a lot of I'm trying to find ways to get the bishop into. To me, it also is kind of crazy that he went to c1. Why didn't he go to c2?
So, which is why I was looking at d3 earlier, because I was thinking, okay, well, if we play queen a1, he has c2 to go to. But let's take a look. Maybe there's something we hadn't seen. So king c2.
Yeah, maybe now some
Um,
d3 ideas, but I don't. We got a lot of defenders on that. Because yeah, I'm also the double takes on e5 and bishop h6. That idea also plays better against king c1. So I feel like there's more than one reason to potentially prefer
yeah,
c2. Um, Maybe we can just play bishop e7 and try to take that knight, and then play bishop f5. But
yeah, that seems like a good approach.
I mean, the knight is hanging, so it's a tempo move too.
Exactly.
You get into a position like this, you think to yourself, I really want to just checkmate until it's over, like captures and stuff. But sometimes, if your opponent's position is really that bad, you don't need to. You can just go check, play a couple normal moves, and then mate.
Exactly. Yeah, so this is a nice game by Daniel.
Oh, but anyways, his solution is much better. So I'm like, let
Yes.
me try to find an improvement on this forced win. So it's funny, but
I mean, I think King C1 made things definitely easier, but even after King C2, um, White's in major trouble. So let's take a look at Connor. Or have we looked at board one at all?
we've not yet.
Okay,
So
let's quickly, well, not quickly, but let's take a look at what's going on between.
we got a time situation. That's a start. I saw at the end there. Nathan's down to 1 minute. And Dane's got 50
Oh,
minutes.
really?
Yep. So
Maybe we should just let's look at the live action then and see where
just
we
for a
are. So
moment.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, Dane's gonna think now, letting Nathan think on his time.
This is so okay. So one threat is rook takes bishop that black is hoping for, and if the king goes to defend the bishop, then maybe there's
Okay, so Nate's up a clean pawn right now. So we can also maybe that also explains some of the difference. Maybe Dane got into
hmm
a desperate position and then started blitzing. Um, but yeah, I mean, Rook C4 also just looks like a huge threat, right?
yeah,
This looks pretty winning for Black to me, just at a glance.
yeah. I mean, if we move the pieces a bit here and here, well, maybe that's not
Well, yeah,
doing the trick because
we got three connected passers that are rolling, and White's pawns are stopped too. So even if we're not queening the C
yeah, we don't
pawn,
have to win in one move.
yeah,
Oh, we played G5. What? This can't be.
so we
What's going on here? So
sacked a full piece, and Nate's like, "Thank you."
yeah, Rook C4, and I think it's over. Oops, sorry.
So yeah, Nate looks like Nathan's about to clutch this on playing off increment.
Unless is there some mating trick here or perpetual trick? So if King takes F6, Rook F1 or F8, sorry, and the King just steps out, and That's that. Oh man.
Yep, and we can see these players on camera. Nathan's in the blue on the left. Dane's in glasses on the right, and Yuvi's looking at their board, checking out what's going on boards 1 and 2.
So maybe he's hoping to. Oh, this is actually. So is he hoping?
Not,
Oh,
I
but it's
mean,
not going to happen.
yeah,
King E7 looks necessary.
Nathan's about to queen with check. He can even play king e5 here, can he? E7, queen
Yeah.
c1 check. Come on, two major pieces are gonna round that king up.
Yes. Make very quick work of him.
But I can see why, you don't want to get into a situation where you have to force mate or else.
Oh, I misread the time. So Dane actually has 49 minutes
Yeah,
to Nathan's 1 minute. Okay.
yeah. I guess this is
Okay.
this is clinical though. There's no reason to step behind the pawns like I was mentioning. Like when this works just as
Mm-hmm.
well and is a lot safer. I mean, I guess now you have to worry a little bit about getting mated a bit after the pawn pushes and maybe the rook slides to the side. Or maybe rook takes a7 then. But it just doesn't matter because your queen will check. Like
Exactly.
that
And
ruins
that's,
all the tactics.
yeah. Okay. Maybe let's go back a bit if you don't mind. I guess we'll
Yeah, yeah,
take a look, see what I got there.
of course.
So it's a
I'm gonna
Nimzo Indian.
I'm gonna fill my water really quick.
Okay. So it's a Nimzo Indian with Dane's preferred E3. 1 point in this sort of position is that with black playing D5, white really doesn't fear having the doubled C pawns because he can easily eliminate the doubled pawn, whatever he or she wants. Okay. So this is a position. It's a position type that's very common and requires delicate handling. I probably won't go into too much detail just because I don't have the knowledge base to go into too much detail. Uh, but I will say that there's always a question of whether one should remove the tension in the center or not, and when.
You
Doing
know,
it at this moment doesn't seem intuitive, but it might work if white is able to get his pawns moving. If black is able to fix or at least restrain effectively the center pawns, then white might be in trouble.
one interesting dynamic of this game is, yeah, we see Nathan playing that dynamic e5, and Nathan loves to play critical main lines. He moves all over the place, so it's not like he's super booked up everywhere, but he looks up a game for the night, or else he has a big repertoire in general. But one thing that you
Mm-hmm.
see in the Nimzo out of Dane is starting to lean into main lines, which is nice to see from Dane, especially as he's getting close to master. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
he's really leaning into his d4 c4 knight c3. You're going to come for you with Nimzo, even though that might be a good option for black as well. But he's ready for the fight, and then I think you're also going to be seeing a lot of Petrov out of him, right? You're not going to be seeing his Fort Knox and
Yes.
his sidelines as much
No,
anymore.
for a brief period, I believe Dane was looking at Torre type stuff. Brief period, I think, where maybe he was looking for some other ways to deal with the knight f6, e6 defenses, and then came back to the Nimzo Indian, and it just feels like he's so much more comfortable in these positions. That said, I'm not so sure I'm happy with f5 here. It seems like maybe an almost gratuitous weakening of the central dark square. Although, okay, maybe he intends to grab influence back with his um, unchallenged bishop, but the bishop at the moment's on c1, and so he probably has to get to work activating that. I should point out that he Dane might have avoided this because he didn't want to have to deal with this splitting the pawns.
Makes
So he
sense.
now has this sort of business going on.
Well,
Uh,
it's funny you mentioned the Tory.
yeah,
I know you play Tory yourself, so I feel like
yes,
Dane going to his main lines is actually people are gonna have less incentive to prep the Tory, right? Because now you don't get to use it. You don't get to use your prep against both Dane and OK. You know,
yes.
it's only OK now. And then you get to the game, he'll probably play Catalan against you anyways, and it's like, man, I did all that Tory prep. Come on, let's bust it out.
Hey, at least, they don't have to worry that they'll have to catch up on their Najdorf poison pawn prep, right? So there's that.
Yeah, OK's probably like, this guy doesn't even play. How does he know all my openings? But I like to research. I like to research what people play.
No, it's good. This is very optimistic. Very optimistic.
Oh, we got Eddie in the chat saying he made a bad miscalc, gave up two rooks for a queen, except he had a pass pawn too. So I guess we'll get to see that when we jump to Eddie's game. But
We'll get to see that in a bit.
welcome to the chat,
Yeah,
Eddie.
this is. I think this is where we started, where we joined the games, was at this moment here,
Okay.
and that's how I ended up winning the pawn. Okay, although it was only temporary because of the rook c4 tactic. So let me go over that a bit slower. So exchange queens, capture the pawn, but then an interesting fork versus skewer of the knight on c3 and pawn on c5. Black responds with knight back, which if white wants to regain his pawn means he'll have to cut his bishop pair in half. But even that might not be enough because of the pawn on g4. So after capture there and rook there, now if you capture on e4, if you capture on c5, then the g4 pawn's hanging. So it seems like Dane might have miscalculated because Dane's a very concrete tactical player, and he likes to look as far ahead as he can. But if something, if he's not firing on all cylinders, then he can have slight mishaps like this, where he's might be some detail that he missed in his calculation. Yeah, this is tough to hold. Excuse me. 8. So if White tries to take advantage of the X-ray with something like Rook B6, then you just come over here, check, and you get a free rook.
Yep.
So 5. And I think Dane's approach here is correct. You have to find some way to get active. Playing normal chess at this moment is going to result in a torturous spectator sport of watching Black's queenside pawns march forward. So he has to go for it.
Ooh, hold on though. Before instead of rook a7, I almost wondering if grabbing that pawn was a little dangerous because the idea I'm seeing is I want to get my bishop to the a3 f8 diagonal and then just mate black. So I feel like playing rook takes a3. Maybe now I can't. But I guess he's gonna play a5 in any case to just shut down my access to that
Yes,
diagonal. But I'm trying to find
exactly. As long as, yeah,
any way to get my bishop there. I don't, maybe through d6, but my king's blocking the alternate paths, so it's just tough.
there, yeah, there's no way to force the bishop onto that diagonal that I can see, unless you can maybe get g5 in and convince Black to capture on g5. Um, yeah, I don't see that there's a way to force it.
Okay, so I guess he had to go for this. Okay, one other question. Instead of playing rook h7 directly, can we play rook h8 check? Because he has to play king e7, and then play
So let's
rook
see.
h7, so then we can take the pawn with check.
The rook here, and then king here.
Yeah, and now
Um,
now maybe even play rook g8 instead. If you want to take that pawn with check and you don't want to
okay.
play king f8.
All right, let's take a look. Uh, I don't know that it makes a huge amount of difference. Well, so
Well,
c3
this is check. I mean, it's a full tempo. Can't hurt.
and then back, and we're in a position similar to what happened in the game, except for we
Well,
reversed
bishop
the
f6.
order, I think.
Bishop f6. We're threatening mate in one.
Ah, yeah, yeah, yeah. That's an important point. So you could be right. Actually, this is not a bad find. So maybe c3 is too slow. Let's see.
I mean, rook h8 would usually make no sense if we didn't have a pawn on e6 because king f7 would be improving his position. But since the pawn controls that square,
Yeah, I'm liking this idea. Let's see how I address that problem. Um, oh, maybe there's g5.
White's king's going to step into discovery now.
He does have en passant,
Yeah, but that's ruining my whole plan.
but that g pawn is also kind of dangerous, right? So
Yeah,
it's not. In fact, if king e6, it might already be good night, Irene.
yeah, just g7. I mean, bishop h7. At least he can sack
Yeah.
bishop, but
So,
but
yeah, maybe
we don't know that silver. Play it out a little further because he could play bishop h7, pawn, queen, rook takes bishop, and then
let's go back here.
he's still got three connected passers. It could be interesting.
So you're talking about, okay, let's go, where are we here? This is, so we're looking at this. Okay. So this here, and then we're looking at G5.
Yeah.
And here, rook there. And so you're saying, where would the king go in this
Well, let's.
situation?
I guess let's say king.
King D7, maybe?
Yeah, I guess d7 makes sense. If you play d5, you can just check again. So,
So now in this position,
well, now just
um,
play g7, and you can't take the rook.
G7,
But now I can play bishop h7. Yeah, and that's what I was saying. And
bishop
now
H7.
let's just imagine you queens, bishop takes, rook takes. Are those pawns any type of? Is this?
Yeah, those pawns can be really difficult to control, but White is going to get a pass pawn soon himself on the G file. And it's not clear that the pawns on the queen side are going to be able to run fast enough. Because the bishop can help sack against one of them at least. The only way to be sure, of course, is to actually play the moves out. But I probably prefer to play white here.
Oh,
Not to say that black. Yeah.
We got Dane Zagar in the chat. Oh, and he's saying
Oh, okay.
he said he was kicking himself for not playing check first, so he's agreeing with us.
Ah, okay, yes. Yeah, I think white is for choice in this one. I mean, it's not clear, but um, bishops move a bit faster than pawns do. So I think black is going to have their work cut out to get the
Oh,
draw in this position.
and Dane was saying, this is also just a bit contrived. Yeah, we were saying let's just imagine he queens. You don't need to do that. You can just play rook h8. Dane pointed out.
Yes, exactly. You
Say
have the time to
say bye bye
get that
bishop,
in.
and then I will.
Yes. So even that shows you how strong a position is when we taint the position with my moves and they're still winning, right? I mean, Rook H8 is just the end of the story right there. But even playing the inferior pawn promotion should be winning.
Well, I think it goes to
So
show when we put when we put your brain, my brain, and Dane in the chat spraying together, we can come up with the right moves. But
yes,
takes
quite right.
takes a we each got to throw a move in here or there, and unfortunately, that's not how it works in a real chess game. You got to find all three by yourself.
Yes, yes. And it is actually impressive that we need three brains and three pairs of glasses to see the moves,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
How many eyes is that? We're like 4, 8, 12.
Yes.
I can do math too.
So okay, but then yeah, after Rook H7, which we now know was inaccurate, um, yeah, now it seems as if
Oh, and not to. Okay, well, let's also just quickly glance at the time spent on Rook H7 because I just want to see.
okay, yeah, let's go back a bit
Because I
and
got a feeling he might have been playing
yeah, yeah,
against
yeah.
Nathan's clock.
Okay, so we're here,
56.
56 minutes.
Yep. 50. Yep. See,
Yeah.
you know, he's got all this time. He could have figured that all out, but he wanted to pressure Nate's clock. He wanted to make, and actually, this is a perfect example of why you don't want to usually do that. Like, you don't usually,
Hmm.
you want to play the position, not the clock, because a lot of times it can turn into, you're turning into a blitz game now. You're not actually using your huge bank of time that you earned, and you get because you're thinking to yourself, I don't want my opponent to be able to think on my time when he's this low on time, but in general, that can work out sometimes, but in general, if you just tell yourself, I'm going to focus on my moves, I'm going to play the best moves possible, I'm not going to worry about my opponent's clock. You can come up with some ideas, right, to play against it. Here's one good way you can do it if you have a huge time bank like this. You can think to yourself, think you still want to think for a long time, but you can think to yourself for two moves, like, okay, you can lock in your move, and I'm ready to play it, right? I'm going to play Rook H7, for example, or I'm going to play Rook H8 or whatnot, and then you can think of all their responses and come up with your response to all their responses, so you can play two moves quickly, but you're still like fully considering the position, not just turning it into a blitz game. Um,
Exactly.
so and
Where
that,
you, um, yeah,
a bit overcritical, but I would say this is just a perfect example of ignore your opponent's clock. You want to use you
yes.
think of your own clock like a gas tank, and you just want to totally ignore your opponent, in my opinion. Um,
Hmm.
not like there's never a circumstance to do it, but mostly just budget your own time. And if your opponent gets into time pressure, and especially if you're playing against Eddie, if Eddie's on increment and
Oh,
you're trying to blitz him, no, he's just gonna keep playing good moves. So you need to actually beat him with chess moves. You're never gonna flag Eddie. So
exactly.
all right. Anyways,
Yeah, the best approach is just continue playing the strongest moves you can find. And typically, those moves would be difficult to defend if they have a lot of time to think about the position. And when they don't, it just adds the pressure. And if you play moves that allow automatic responses, um, that makes life easier for them. If you play moves that give them choices, when you're in time trouble, you don't want to have choices. You want to be playing automatic moves. And if your opponent plays strong moves that give you choices, where each one, like, and it's funny to say this because Rook H8 is forcing, um, and you say, well, this forces him to play the only move. However, now, if you had had the idea back here at this point, and he's probably doesn't have time, so he just captures the pawn on a3, and then you play the Rook H8 check, forcing him up here, and then Rook G8. Now he has plenty of choices to make, none of which are good. Now, of course, I'm not saying you play with that in mind, but it just so happens that if this had happened in the game, I think that uh, Nate might have collapsed
well,
even easier.
and Rook H7 is attractive too. The thing is, you just need to spend more time look at both. But that's it's easy to criticize from the armchair here, but just wanted to point that
Yes.
out more for our viewers than to Dane knows all this, and it's
No,
easy to let it
while I
slip
was
in the early
pointing out,
game.
yes, no, while I was pointing out I was trying to point out a bit of inconsistency in the logic, right? Because I made a case for why you don't want to play direct moves that give for easy responses by the opponent who's in time trouble. But in this case, the winning move was to play the direct move.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess part of what I was trying to get at is trying not to be a slave to principles. In general, you don't want to give them easy decisions. But if the easy decision is between getting mated in two or getting mated in four, um, either one is fine by you, right? So you play the best move you can find, and that requires thinking about it rather than trying to blitz them.
Yeah, I
So
think
just
just
to add on to your point, yeah,
pretend they have an hour on their clock, and just
exactly.
you still want to beat them in the exact same way you would beat them if they. I mean, yeah. If you get really advanced, there's maybe sometimes you want to make some different decisions psychologically or whatever, but you know, for the most part,
I'm going
that's
to.
it. All right, next
I,
game.
I, I want to take a look at Mr. Blomer's game,
Oh, okay, we
if
got
that's okay.
Yes, definitely. We got Eddie in the chat too, and
Okay.
he said he'd play your openings. So let's see if he held to his word.
Okay. I've been known to play this as black. Huh. Now, did John just start playing this B3 business?
No, John's having an opening crisis in general. He's going all over the place, and he knows
Oh,
Eddie knows his openings extremely well. So I'd say John is probably trying to dodge Eddie's prep in general. He's just a bit. If I had to guess, I have no idea. Maybe John mains B3
okay.
now, but if John really doesn't respect the opponent and is trying to smush him, he'll play D4 main lines because
Hmm.
that's his historical main. But he is moving around. He's learning E4. Clearly, he is
Okay.
playing sidelines, and I'd say that you really got to be scared of John if he's playing D4 C4, D4 C4 Knight C3. Like he knows that stuff super well, and here he's probably just trying to get a game where both sides are out of prep.
I mean, both sides have decent positions right now, I think. Um,
Yeah, Eddie actually is super annoying, and the more experienced players will realize this, like John, who's played him a lot. Is you think this guy plays 10 openings, he's not going to know what's going on, but unfortunately Eddie does. He plays 10 openings, and he knows the
mhm.
theory and all the openings. So it's just like okay,
I remember being on the wrong side of what I call the new and improved Milner Barry. That's where uh, White plays as if they're going towards a Milner Barry, and so somebody discovered that they didn't have to recapture on C3, and then Black doesn't have really great waiting moves. So let me put it on the board here, if it's okay. So here, so this is the Miller-Berry gambit.
yep.
White's gambiting the pawn on d4, and uh, and so Black feels obliged to take it. And back when chess players were gentlemen, they understood that they're supposed to capture on d4, and then bishop d7 would happen, and then White would castle, and then in orderly fashion, Black would take the pawn. And then somebody decided, no, we could just castle. And so one of my first games, I was playing the black pieces in this position. I'm not even sure I'd faced it before. Maybe he might have been the first person to play against me. And I'll just cut to the chase and say that it was not a happy ending for me. Eddie did the business to me. Um, and it was one of those things where I think we had played some other opening where I was black, and I understood that he looked at openings, but I was not expecting him to come up with this. And he just played it pretty competently, and well, competently enough to crush me. So that's just a small anecdote about Eddie's broad opening knowledge.
Yeah, Milner.
So here,
French
yeah.
players got to watch out for Milner Berry in general. We got. Have you solved that yourself? I hope you have. We got Tim maining it, Eddie busting it out, and there's got to be a couple other mains by now.
Oh yeah, I've got ongoing arguments with all three of those guys. With Eddie, well, Eddie not so much. I don't. We haven't played
Yeah, Eddie moves
that
around,
line in
so
a while, but definitely with Tim Rodebacher. When we play, it's usually a set match of Milner Berries when he's white, and then old Indian type positions when he's black, and we just toss at each other. We had a playoff match for the state seniors 2 years ago, and yeah, that's how the match went. Every game was Emil de Berry when he was white, and I don't know if you know the Grandmaster Andras Adorian. I think he's passed away now. from Hungary. He was pretty active in the 80s, 90s, and he started as he scaled back his chess play, he started writing books, and he had pretty popular book called Black is Okay, where he's showing how black can get good positions and dynamic positions. He was a dynamic player. Unfortunately, our match seemed to go the opposite way because white won every single game in the matches between me and Tim, that seniors thing. So yes,
So
Andreas probably wasn't too happy.
you haven't solved the Milner Berry yet. Then
No,
nice.
no.
No, it is tough. I asked my coach about it. He gave me some vague line, but nothing, no direct refutation. So it's and he's a French guy too. He played French to win major tournament in France final round.
Mm.
Must win with black. So yeah, French is. I feel like French is on the up. It's got a lot of respect nowadays. I mean, it's always Big Four, anyways. The Big Four openings that are respected against E4 are E5, C5, C6, and E6. So, sorry to Team Scandi out there. It's not quite in the Big Four, but we do also have our Scandi. We got our Scandi aficionado John Bartholomew in state, who's releasing the epic
Yeah.
Scandi chessable course. So maybe it'll be Big Five soon. But
We'll see how that goes. No, I think Jackson Wall's another Scandi guy, but he hasn't been too active
yes,
recently.
Endgame aficionado. Yep, play that Queen D6 Scandi.
Yes.
I like to play 3 Knight of 3 against the Scandi, just get it really dynamic, and I feel like that's exactly what they don't want. But
Well, it depends. So, um, yeah, Knight of Three is not my favorite. I mean, I've played Ascani as black myself, and it's not the Knight of Three systems are not the most pleasant to play against. I'll give you that.
well, I knew you were a French
So
main, so
this position,
I didn't realize you played Scandi, or else I would have been a little softer on it. I thought I was safe in French players' midst. Complimenting the French up, but
well,
secret Scandi
The
player
Scandi is
too.
my current the Scandi is my current refutation to the Milner Berry.
Ah,
Um,
so they scared you off the French. Hey, if you could, I feel like hey, if you can scare someone off their main, that's like a success in and of itself.
oh, I didn't say I'm scared away from the French. If
Ah,
I know the person plays the Milner Berry competently, then I'll give them another look with D5 instead.
yes.
I haven't
Yeah.
I haven't reverted to A6 B5, but maybe that might be coming in
Ah,
my next life.
yeah. That's the if they really kill your French and then they kill your Scandi, you're like, okay, what? I guess we're back to the
Yes.
old days. Let's A6 B5. Let's do it.
Yes. So so here, this is an interesting position. Yeah, it seems like oh, is that legal? Oh, there's a pawn under attack on F7. Got it. D5.
Okay. Yep. C6 makes sense. Where's the bishop going?
Yeah, this is
Looks loose.
looks rather loose.
I mean,
Um,
is knight C4 an idea?
I think it is. I think the end game is probably
Well, getting one of these beastly bishops that way. It looks like.
so. Yeah, if say I don't know if knight c4
I'm probably just blundering though.
is working.
I mean,
Um,
you can at least play bishop H7, and then take the knight
so bishop
potentially.
h7, queen here, and then if pawn here,
But now, yeah, we're
queen
playing
here, and I think this ending has to be better for black.
for sure.
Um, Yeah.
Yeah, and
So knight g6 was played in the game. Yep.
I'm not sure on this, but I'm feeling like I'm detecting a potential, way we can target John because, look at his game last week against Ethan. Just plays Queen C7, walking right into the discovery, saying, "I don't buy it. You have nothing." Does it again this
Yeah.
game. Just throws his bishop right in the path of a discovery. Says, "What do you got, buddy?" So I feel like John is, has a lack of danger around discovery attack. Maybe needs to
Hmm.
hit the discovered attack pattern section of some tactics book or something. But
Well, if no one's punishing him, why would he stop doing it, right?
yeah, yeah. And we don't have the engine on. We could be just blundering here. And John's like, well, clearly there's a refutation and that we're not seeing, but I don't know.
I don't know about this thing here. So okay, that is interesting. So queen g5 makes sense under those circumstances.
Yeah, E3 still looks so soft. Like White's position looks a little bit. Hey, it's double edged, but
Yeah,
I'm happy as
yeah. White's
black
position
had
is not
activity.
looking. It might be a bit of a mirage though, because there's like knight f5, I believe. Yeah, that's what he plays, knight f5, and then the bishop probably has to either go back to f8 or exchange on e5.
It's, okay, C5 is blunder Y. G7, got it.
Yeah.
But I mean, maybe we should at least think about it. What if Bishop
So
C5?
bishop c5. Now, I guess there are two approaches.
I mean, we could play Bishop
One
G7,
that
threaten Knight H6.
immediately comes to mind is this.
Yeah, it's a mate threat. Oh, and your bishop's hanging.
Yeah.
So
And if you go with bishop here, then the knight's attacking the queen, and you still have the mate threat going.
yeah. Plus, you also have Bishop G7, threatening Knight H6, forking the king and
Yes.
queen. So yeah,
Yes.
there's a lot going on here that's probably lending you to say I actually need to deal with White's threats. I can't just make counter threats.
Exactly. So bishop e5 under those circumstances makes sense. Um, Now, so bishop takes, rook takes, queen f2, rook f8. Okay, dealing with potential threats against the f7 pawn. So okay, after the skirmishes, somehow White's pieces are a bit better. Not exactly sure how that happened, but yeah, White's pieces are just a little bit more active, and Black's pieces aren't currently making too much sense.
Well, maybe he's trying to get Alkine's gun on the E file. This E3 pawn is looking still vulnerable to me. The major piece ending potentially.
Hmm.
Ooh, nice.
Ouch!
Yep. Back rank issues. So nice spot by John.
Yes.
John with the tactics. Yeah, doesn't even need time to spot
Yeah.
those tactics. Nice job, John. John, I know I'd give John a lot of flack for not using time, but clearly very strong player. Glad we're playing. Glad
So
to have a
is
plan
Rook
Thursdays.
f5 working here? Is Rook f5 working here? Maybe there's Rook d6, but let's take a look. So Rook f5, because it's not check, right? So if
Yep.
Rook f5, um, maybe it's knight q5. Um, but then queen g6,
He can
I
even just
think. Or even, yeah.
even f6. Yeah, anywhere that protects the rook, you already have knight protecting it too.
Yeah,
So I don't know about
queen
that.
g6 or queen f6. Yeah, let's see, because it seems like knight g6 is a bit. Maybe we're missing something
Yeah, yeah,
obvious,
rook
but
f5 looks a lot stronger.
um, uh, uh, and yeah, after knight g5, for example, or maybe there's knight d8 too. That would be another way of doing it. Um, yeah, if that happens, then this variation might be interesting, and white's ending up a pawn up.
Well, hold on. After knight d8, can what about? Okay,
Sorry,
never
here.
mind. I was thinking rook takes, but that's rook takes, rook is check.
Yeah, that's the key, is that the back rank is still an issue.
But still, I just want to move my queen, protecting my rook.
Oh, so yeah, if you played queen here, maybe. So now we're doubly attacking. Now we're doubly attacking the. And so if and then if this happens, then rook check and thank you. So yeah, maybe queen c8 deals with that extra monkey business. So I don't know. Maybe is Eddie still in the chat? Is what is Eddie? What was Eddie thinking after knight f7? And did he look at rook f8? Oh, rook f5. Sorry.
Yep, he just said he had a miscalc and gave up two rooks for a queen.
Oh, okay. 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 Got it. That's what the initial comment was about. Was this position then?
Yeah, yeah. So you just said he missed it.
Oh. Oh. So Eddie probably thought he could take on e5 and missed that he still had the back rank issue.
Yep,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Yeah, you could play
Okay.
queen 65 at the end.
Yeah. Because if he plays, yes, for the viewers, if he plays queen e5 here, now this check, and the other way to block it is with this, and then checkmate. Okay, so that's what happened.
All
And
right.
these rooks have
Yeah,
all they really want in life.
and
Yep.
I would usually be interested in a discussion on how we can convert the rooks against the queens most effectively and stuff, but we are a bit behind on the other games, so
Yes, we have to look at the other games. So let's go. This one, I think,
let's just blitz through the conversion.
yeah, the final moves.
So looks like a pretty
So
clean
basically,
conversion.
you're moving your pawn for.
Yeah, he's trying to get some counterplay against the king at least, so I like that attempt. Wow, and it looks like he did get a little bit, even
But
allowing
not enough.
pawn takes rook at a certain point there.
Yes.
But it doesn't matter when you're about to get a queen.
And now it's done.
Okay,
Checkmate.
well he did John 128 in the finish, so Eddie did get him to use more than his starting time. So you know, congratulations, Eddie. It could have been a lot worse, right? You know,
Oh man,
and
that's crazy.
nice game to John.
So let's see.
John's winning though. We're gonna see John against the big guys here.
Oh, okay.
Not that Eddie's
Well,
not one of the big guys, but John has huge minus records against Dane and Connor. So we'll see if we can get him to use any time against those guys. But
do we have? Is there a way to know? to have a reasonable expectation of who John will be playing next?
Yeah, since he's been winning, I'm not sure exactly, but the pairings will be pretty reliable round four
Okay.
when he's on such a winning record,
Okay.
because there'll only be a couple players
Let's,
that could be paired at that point at the top. I guess
so it looks like
Connor's
Yuvi
gonna lose him
bounced
though,
back.
so he might not play Connor, but Dane,
Okay.
Dane just lost too, so I don't know. We'll see.
Did Nate lose earlier in the tournament? Or is he on
Nate's two and
three?
Nate is leading in this round, so Nate was 2-0 going into the round, and
Okay, so
So
Nate will be the top guy.
yeah, actually Nathan's crushing this tournament, and so Nathan's 3-0,
Yeah.
and he was 2-0
Yeah.
alone, so Nathan is like on his way to really closing it out this month.
Oh, he's representing for us grayheads, yeah?
Yeah,
So
good job, Nathan. Yeah, and he also
so
donated the
Yuvi,
prize, so he's about to win back the money he donated. So thank you to Nathan.
let's take a look at Yuvi's bounce back win against Ronan. What? Wait a second. I
What?
thought Yuvi was supposed to be a dragon guy.
Yeah, but he's also he's friends with Jason. Jason is the ultimate classical Sicilian guy, and so
Ah,
you
okay.
know UV is branching out into two areas.
So,
It's not
okay.
this isn't
Now
a one
I'm
off. This is he's studying this and mixing it in with his dragon.
you're gonna have to help me with this one. So, I understand that when you mix um Nidorf with G6, that's a Dragadorf, right?
Yep, that's the Dragendorf, and you can punish that with Queenside Casting plans.
Okay. So this is a thing as well?
Okay, so Bishop E2 is just he's playing positional. He wants to avoid theory, right? The reason why people don't play
Yes.
classical in general is instead of Bishop E2 here, they play Bishop G5. That is the rouser.
Going to the Richter Rouser, right?
Yep, that's the critical line. That's what I'm trying to play, but at the same time, like I like to play positional openings, so it's kind of a impasse for me, right? I want to, well, that's what you're supposed to play, but it also is like intense, right? So I
Hmm.
could see playing Bishop E2 against the classical as well because I also like to play Bishop E2 against the Najdorf, but Bishop E2 against the Najdorf is a lot more mainline than you can also play Bishop E2 against the
Yeah, against this.
Dragon.
If I remember, there's a system here. Is it the Boleslavsky with E5? Is this a thing?
Potentially. Knight B5. I mean, Knight
Yeah,
DB5.
maybe it's not this position.
Knight DB5 is coming, and then it's kind of getting into more four knights territory or something, or because
Okay.
they'll play like E6 and then E5. It's kind of weird. Yeah, right. You got to be careful, but I'd say
Yeah,
if
somehow I thought because I remember um yeah, I think this is Boleslavsky's variation, if I'm not mistaken. Um and uh and yeah, if I remember that this is not supposed to be that great for white. It's um there's certain concrete reasons why white's position can become even more flat than we see in the what's Sveshnikov. This knight, the knight maneuver here is nowhere leaves white even flatter than he gets to be in the Sveshnikov. Okay, anyway, uh, uh,
interesting.
I guess I'm revealing I'm not. I know a little bit about E4, but not enough. Just enough to sound smart and be dangerous to myself.
Well,
Um,
so we know one thing from this game. I think so far is that Ronan doesn't want a theory battle. Bishop E2.
yes.
there's two way, and you can do this against a lot of Sicilians. So you can play bishop e2, and then you also can play g3, bishop g2, and both of those. The thing is, the white pieces are easy. You know, both of those are
Mm-hmm.
they're gonna lead to 0.00 positions. So
Mm.
it's definitely a way to play. You know, you're just gonna here's what's gonna happen though. Black is gonna develop. You're gonna play on your half of the board. Black's gonna play on their half of the board. You're both gonna develop your pieces completely, and then you're gonna play from there. And that is a success for Black in general,
Mm-hmm.
because you're white. You can take all the space and you can prevent them from developing their pieces properly, right? And you know, a way to like really go for the throat against the classical Sicilian is bishop g5 instead of bishop e2, right? Because now you're playing, you know, black has to react in certain only move ways, but which they've studied a lot, right? And that's what they're also hoping for,
Yeah.
because they're going to get some mating, you know, some attacking chances against you and stuff. But I play a ton of positional systems myself. It's not a bad strategy by any means either, because you can get your home
Okay.
turf, you get 0-0s, and but now you've played this position a ton. You know which pieces to exchange. You know what plans to go for. So yeah, and the thing is, Open Sicilian is huge, right? So it's not practical to play Bishop G5 against the Najdorf, play Bishop, you know, play Rouser, play sharp this, sharp that, everywhere, right? You gotta at some point pick some practical lines that are just positional and chill. And classical Sicilian is so rare too. I mean, I guess it's not that rare now. We got Jason plus UV playing it, but
Yes.
you know, it's a lot more rare than Najdorf or Sveshnikov, or maybe even Khan. So it makes sense that it's just not an area to focus on unless you like, unless you're paired against Jason that week. You might as well brush up on it.
Yes.
But anyways,
Okay. Well, thanks for the insights there. That's definitely not Minnesota's foremost authority on anything E4. Well, okay, maybe I know a bit about playing against E4, but okay, this is an interesting decision here. So, first of all, there, and I guess Black is not unhappy with moving the pawn further. Is he just going to, if Bishop GT were to happen, is the idea to just keep that bishop looking ugly? Maybe eventually get E5, D5, H5, and move the Armada forward?
I mean, maybe, but I'd take white here. You know, I'm gonna play against those extended pawns.
Hmm.
Is my idea. Like I'm seeing those as weakness, not as strength.
Not a strength. Okay.
But
Okay.
I could be
Yeah,
totally wrong.
it seems to be like it seems to be like Black is going to play actively to make those kingside pawn moves a feature and not a bug in his position. And I guess Queen A5 is on the menu. So, which happens to also defend G5. So maybe there's something afoot here.
See, I want to defend my queen so I can threaten knight 5 tactics, but
Oh, you mean like Rook FD1 or something like this
yeah,
to
something
try and
like
get 95 in?
yeah, I want yeah, I you know, I'm just seeing that cheapo, and
Hmm.
I guess he can play queen d8 back anyways, but still.
So this is uh, often a difficult decision strategically. Um, if and when to play F4 to position like this. Now, we'll forget that there's a tactic that White missed. But in general, because I think I remember seeing some old Karpov games where he would play F5, and then he has an isolated E pawn, and he'll have like a rook on F4 or something. And it might be this bishop E2 type. approaches against the Sicilian, and would happily have his isolated e pawn, and then black might. Let's see, what would black's pawns often be? It might be against like a Shevenigan approach, but I always wondered about that isolated e pawn. And is it a strength? Is it a weakness? Is White's idea that okay, well, in order to get that, he now has a half open F file, and might be controlling F5 better. In any case, those considerations uh, hail into
Yes,
oblivion
nice.
after Rook
I was
B2.
I was you told I did find it, but not until you told me there was a tactic. So I was
Uh,
like, and then it still took me a solid 3 minutes here of like what's the tactic? And I'm like, okay, but I did find Rook B2, but
cool.
I'm not going to be able to get full credit for it, but still,
No, you get full credit because you found it eventually, right? You didn't, unless you're going to say that you asked a silicon friend of yours.
no, no, no.
But
No, we don't use any
yes, I
engine
mean,
on
if you got it,
no engine Thursday nights. At least when we have a master on,
yes,
I'll use it. I'll use it by my lonesomes because no one wants to just see my commentary. Like I'll be like going in positional directions and like everything's hanging. So
no, this is a cute tactic. This Rook B2,
yeah. So wait,
and
was he threat? How many moves was he? When did he first threaten that? And so F4 is the first move that
so
hung.
he threatened it. So he threatened it when he played Queen A5.
Yep. So Queen A5 had that threat to start, and that's the main
Yeah,
purpose of
Queen
Queen
A5
A5,
had the threat.
right?
Queen
F.
A5 is kind of multi-purpose, yeah, because as I mentioned earlier, one idea is it's also keeping an eye on G5, making. I did mention that it was also making room for the rook if the other rook wanted to come to the C file, and is preparing to get the rooks maybe doubled on the D file. So there are all those different strategic considerations.
Mm-hmm.
But the most important one was the tactical consideration.
Yeah, there's a saying that you're supposed to when your opponent makes a move, you want to come up with three reasons why, because a lot of times you can come up with there's one logical reason, two logical reasons, but then like the third is the one that gets you because
Yeah.
uh, but yeah,
So
I didn't see that primes. You should see that right after Queen A5 if you really have your tactics alert on. You see, oh, he's threatening, you know, Rook B2, but it's hard to get to that level. Um,
well, I'm not the most tactically sharp player on the circuit, and usually if I see tactics like this that quickly, it's probably because I've been a victim of it at least 2 or 14 times. Um, so sometimes you learn that way. Sometimes you learn from doing the puzzles yourself. But yeah, certain patterns that show up in your head, and you say, okay,
yep.
this is a warning. There's a warning light flashing, and I dare say that Ronan probably won't fall for this as easily the next time it appears after dealing with it in this game.
Yeah, hopefully I hope I can learn from Ronan too, and then you know see this pattern in my own game, and I won't lose points from it. But no,
Yeah.
I don't have that one ingrained either. So I'm in your shoes, Ronan. I needed to be prompted with there's a puzzle here, and then I found it. But that's not pattern recognition.
Oh, so here, I thought maybe he was going to play 92 just to, although, okay, it's not really doing anything. So my idea with 92 was hoping to trap the bishop, but there's really no easy way to get at the bishop. And in any case, he can remove the warden with bishop c3. So, okay, so bishop takes d2, pawn takes, bishop takes, and it's easy enough to claim this is just a matter of technique, but I think it's worthwhile seeing how um, UV. Okay, so This is good. So 92. Even if you know that the bishop can't be trapped, it's a good idea to bring it to a safe square, and it also doubles um, by allowing the pawn a nice highway down to A1.
Yeah, I think you can see why Oka is tuned into bishop trap tactics because it's a good way to win a classical chess game. It's it seems to happen. It's just it lends itself to classical chess. Like no one wants to go pawn grabbing in blitz because they just want to play for activity anyways. But in classical, they're like, that is a free pawn, and I want it, and let me justify taking it for the next 15 minutes. And yes, okay, I'm taking it. And you know, trapping the bishop is it's just something you can overlook. Yeah, but yeah, it is a motif that happens over and over. So every time you're going to play bishop takes a7 or bishop takes h7, make sure they can't just push a pawn and create a pawn chain that traps your bishop behind their pawn chain, um, and then come and collect that bishop because that is
Yeah,
sad times.
and even from a slightly more sophisticated viewpoint, even if the bishop isn't captured, the fact that it's sequestered um, in, I don't know, Zanzibar while the fight is happening in Detroit um, means you're playing effectively down a piece. Yeah, so be careful about all those stray pawns. And I'm giving a warning to myself because I'm very good at capturing irrelevant pawns and having to find a way to extricate my pieces. So here and discovered attack on the rook, captures, and okay. Um, okay, so now the idea being that it releases by defending the pawn with the bishop in this way, it releases the rook to become active, but also means that White's rook has one less square to move to. Nice, nice tactic to get the rook into play. Not that it would have worked, but it's good to create some problems. So, say if this had been played, then potentially it's not working fully, but at least uh, try to needle the opponent as much as possible wherever you can is a principle. And so UV brings the bishop back. No funny business. And and this is another useful technique. Uh, don't you have an advantage in the end game, and it's normal to. Well, I worked hard to get this advantage. This is the advantage I'm going to use to win. And you sometimes need to be flexible and decide, well, um, what if I gave him a fresh set of problems to solve, which is what UV is doing by capturing this pawn. Now, rather than a passed queen rook pawn, he has a passed king rook pawn. Um, and the rook capturing on a4 uh, is not a problem for another reason.
Let's trade down.
No, not trade down, win a free rook.
Yes, of course.
so, so there's a bit of trickery there too. I mean, besides just the idea of exchanging advantages, but in this case, there's a tactical reason why that doesn't work as well.
Yeah,
Um,
I am doing my
so
puzzles every day, so hopefully soon I'll notice that that's the full rook and not a rook trade. But can't have it
no,
all.
it's very easy. I mean, we've been going for a few hours here, and it's very easy to miss. miss those details, especially when in the end game we have a tendency to be a bit more schematic in our thinking. But I found that a lot of the really good endgame players are also really good tacticians. And you think, well, there's so few pieces. Why would that matter? There are lots of tactics that can happen with only two pieces on the board.
Yep, I want to plug. There's a book I intend to read in the future. It's on my list, but it's hard to get to everything. Called Van Perlo's Endgame Tactics, which is kind of a
Mm,
legendary book. That's I know Connor has worked through that entire book, so that's one
okay.
testament. And yeah, it's ton of tactics in the end game. So they are, and it also goes to show why you shouldn't shake hands too early ever.
Prematurely.
Yep.
Yes. Now we have four more games to look at, right? So
Oh, yep.
let's see.
Yeah, I'd say
Um,
we did kind of look at.
let's do
Okay,
the end of Ethan's game,
sure.
Ethan and Miles. See how that turned out, because when we left, um, Miles was putting some pressure on. 96 happened.
Okay.
We had mentioned that as a possibility. Ah, that way. Okay.
Okay, so getting at C2.
Is Bishop D1 a problem? Oh, I suppose maybe he has knight B3, so it wouldn't have mattered. He has to give up a pawn some way or the other.
Okay, White's got the connected passers now, potentially.
There's a tactic here. Yeah, okay, so how does it respond to that? Okay. Wait a
Yeah,
minute.
knight f3.
Oh, but then he gets two pieces for the rook? Might be his concern.
Yeah, but what about bishop takes knight
And
first?
then
Wait, what's the problem with that?
huh?
Oh, got it.
So yeah, no, so that's what I'm thinking. Bishop takes knight first might. That's the reason why bishop takes knight first was played. I was just wondering. Okay. This is actually some pretty decent kung fu fighting, right? So the idea is you're covering the rook so that after knight f3 at some point, um, the rook on d1 is staring at a protected bishop on f3. On d5, sorry. So now, after knight f3, rather than being able to follow up with rook takes d6, the bishop's in the way. It does mean dropping a pawn, and now it becomes a basic race of whose pawns can touch down first. Now, in this position, they agree to draw here.
Hmm. Yeah, seems like someone will win this.
Uh, yeah, yeah. This is one of those, even if the position is even, it's not drawn. But I think they were both happy to not play this in a time scramble, maybe. Um,
I,
okay, well,
I'd
let's.
I'd probably accepted both sides myself, so I'm not gonna. You know,
Mhm.
you
Yeah, yeah.
get stressed out to a certain point here. You're not sure you're winning and losing, but no, you should just play all these out though, because you're robbing yourself of experience. But it's easier said than done from commentator seat without my rating points on the line.
Yes,
So
exactly. Just as it's always easier to sack another person's queen.
yeah, and draws. A draw. Ultimately, a draw does feel good usually, unless it depends on the player. I mean, if you're the one seed, I guess you want all wins, but you've been battling for the last few hours. You just don't want to lose.
So we have a fianchetto variation against the Grunfeld here. And Yeah, I'm not really that well versed in this position, but it does seem as if
He's
White
he,
has a very pleasant position here.
Thomas is our newest entrant, but he's a theory nerd, and so he's gonna be predictable, and so is Jason. So we got a battle of the theory nerds here. I'm not exactly sure how what Jason knows against Grunfeld, but it's also interesting. They both chose Catalan White, so makes perfect sense. That's
Hmm.
that's what a sophisticated player would choose. If I knew everything I knew now, I'd probably go back in time and be a Catalan main, just like you and Matt Jensen, and you know maybe I'd be up there by you guys. But you know, E4, I'm just trying
Is
to
it?
trying to keep it happening. But I think Thomas and Jason are both pretty smart with their Catalan mains. But unfortunately, neither of them could play Catalan this game because Thomas plays Grunfeld that prevents it, and yeah,
Well, actually, if you do this mind experiment and look at the normal setup that Black goes for in the Grunfeld, the Catalan, in many ways, is a reverse color Grunfeld.
yes, just
Think
like
about that.
yeah. So yeah, you're right. And somebody else, one of my friends actually did make that point the other day, and then somebody responded that Ross Limo is really just a Nimzo, and so that is my
Hmm.
I don't know anything about Grenfell, but that's my version of or Catalan. But my version of doing that is I play Ross Limo whites. I also play Sveshnikov, so I allow Ross Limo, so I'm ready for it, and then
Hmm.
I play Nimzo black, so I believe that's a congruent repertoire on my side, and
Yeah,
Catalan and Gerdfeld is another good way to have a congruent repertoire. So Thomas
yeah.
clearly, I bet you he did his
He put some
he
thought into his
yeah
choices. Yeah.
yeah he did the master plan. You know he's ready to take his openings all the way to 2200 uh,
There you go.
without having to change and have some angst over Fort Knox or Torre.
Yes. So this position, there's a lot of maneuvering going on. Um, okay, interesting.
Ooh, I don't. What is that for? I feel like I'm blunting my own bishop.
Yeah, it's so he's trying to. It seems like he's trying to prevent, like he's trying to prevent e5, and maybe in some universe would like to play um one of his knights to e5, but while trying to gain influence over e5, it's weakening e4 and depriving the bishop on e3 of squares. So let's see how this works out. Tactics to the rescue. So if queen takes b5, the knight, well, let me put it on the board. And somebody's not happy, namely the knight on b8. So, which is the reason why bishop f6 is played, and bishop f2, which, by the way, bishop f2 was making way for, say, an e4 if queen b5 had happened. Okay, yeah, has the distinct aroma of a of an equal position here, where neither player can make progress. So,
Hmm.
okay, heavyweight positional battle. Now let's look at
See, now
Mr.
now that position made sense to agree to a draw compared to
Yes, yes, quite right. So here we have a Queen's
these.
Gambit declined, played the way they used to before someone discovered that the bishop might be better outside the pawn chain. And in reality, I'm not being facetious, that in the early days, people would play the Queen's Gambit declined with e3, um, so as not to deal with complications of the pawn being taken on c4 probably or whatever. And then at some point in the late 1800s, I think, was when um, bishop g5 and bishop f4 started to be played.
Interesting.
Just a small
Yeah, it's like
historical thing there.
getting some Kale dynamics going on now. It feels like
This is now more of a college than a regular Queen's Gambit declined.
yeah. You play some Kale yourself? I think I maybe saw some games if I remember. Maybe not. That's Dane.
Uh,
It would blend well with your
yeah,
repertoire,
Dane
but
plays it.
you know you got the
I
rest of
hadn't
those D
actually
you got
given
the
it a
rest of those
thought.
KG you got the rest of those KGD4 lines. So
Yes, yes, I haven't added the Kali to it yet.
okay.
Had considered it some time ago, but never
So there we see.
really.
It's it's even too antipositional for the A6 B5 main. So that's not a good advertisement for Kale.
Oh man, yes, yes. See, um,
No, but that was his pass. I'm giving him flack for A6 B5 when he hasn't even been playing that in years. So, but
this is actually. So how did this happen? Oh, okay. So it's still not a problem, and then it becomes a problem after e4. And I think most of us are familiar with LPDO,
yep.
loose pieces drop off. And so White's queen is unprotected.
Ouch.
Kaboom.
Yep. Thought so. This is classic. Not seeing your opponent's ideas. This is how I lost against Eddie yesterday too. I saw something that looked a little bit attractive for myself. Let me push forward, like get some activity on this D file. Maybe it wasn't the same situation in my game against Eddie, but really not seeing ideas for the opponent. As soon as you can put yourself in your opponent's mind's eye, which I can't do myself yet, but if you can do this, it will give you a lot of points quickly. Um,
Mhm.
because yeah, and this is a tough one because it's not like your opponent made a threat that you didn't see. That it's not like they threatened something and you just ignore the threat. Like there wasn't a threat until you pushed your pawn.
It's
But
actually similar to, was it Thomas last week who was playing Robert Donahue?
yeah, rook takes f2.
Yes, yes. Which the possibilities for black appeared because white created them in a way by playing the e5 d5 the sorry d5 e6, then actually created the possibilities that black used to finish the game. And I think it's a similar dynamic here, where at this point the tactic really doesn't exist, and even at this point the tactic doesn't exist, and requires opening up for the check before the tactic exists. And so this is one of those things where, which we discussed last week, um, before you make your move, don't just focus on what you're trying to do yourself and all the good things that your move is doing. Figure out what bad things your move might be doing. And in this case, it was creating this bishop f2 tactic.
Well, and these are both every week channel viewers, so these guys are both learning from every game, and they're up and coming players in the club, both in the open section. So
Cool.
definitely not too shocking to see some blunders, but as long as we're taking our time, learning from them, um, definitely going to see these
Hmm.
guys probably headed to Premier before too long at all.
Before too long, yeah.
We got Miles in the chat, by the way, saying hi, Dr. Oki and Chris. Thanks for analyzing.
Oh,
Thanks for viewing, Miles.
hey.
And yeah, we did have a peak of eight or nine viewers earlier. We got 5 viewers currently. So thanks for tuning in, watching the analysis. We appreciate
Cool.
it. And then Miles, you specifically, make sure you flip to the beginning of the episode. We actually profiled you as the player of the week, so we pulled up some of your rating history and stuff. So check that out. And yeah, really impressive with all your wins against Jordan, especially, and then of course that draw against Caden Trough. So very cool to kind of check out some of your history.
Uh, Now the nomenclature in E4 E5 is sometimes annoying. Now, so we start off with a bishop's opening, right? Which then looks like it might go into a Italian game, except for now we're in some sort of Vienna. Is that correct?
Yeah, it looks like to me. Yep, this looks like a three bishop
Okay.
c4 Vienna type. And
Okay.
hey, that's smart of Connor. He's got himself to a mainline plan, not a mainline plan, but the main line of the way you should play the Vienna. So he's playing like a best plan, even if it's for a sideline. And he kind of move ordered Norman,
Hmm.
maybe confused Norman with the move order on the way there.
Yes, I was going to point out that Queen G5 has, as you're talking about how you look for two or three reasons why the opponent played a move, and Queen G5 is attacking G7, but it's also attacking G4, and I don't know that there's a way to solve all the problems there. Um, but after Myron played 0-0, now we see that White is
Yep. Two pieces
gaining material.
pieces for a rook is always
Two pieces per row.
almost always going to
Yeah.
be favorable for the pieces. So you don't need to think that hard about doing that. That's just it's like taking a piece. You're like,
Yes.
do I want a piece? Yeah, I think so. Do I want two pieces for a rook? Yeah,
Now,
I do.
is is there a tactic here based on? Oh, okay. I was looking at Bishop takes F7 initially, um, which Black can play King H8. It's an extra pawn, but okay, maybe it's nothing too special. But it might be worthwhile just looking a little bit into it for why you shouldn't be capturing with um, the rooks or king here.
Yeah,
So
I got the king.
capturing with the
Okay,
king,
yes, I solved that one
also
myself.
that,
Thank you.
right? And then, sorry, and then capturing with either rook. So if you go with this one, then we can check anywhere and win the undefended queen on c8.
Yeah,
Um, and if you capture with this one, then I think we have
well, just
knight here,
take
check,
the rook and then take the
and then we
knight.
take with check.
Yep. Well, he won't take the knight,
Um,
but if he did take the knight, then we'll take your queen.
yes.
You'll just
Yeah.
get to like carousel and play it.
So, um, and actually, yeah. So if so, black will end up. Is that a is that a pawn or two down? I don't know if this is actually two. Maybe it's not that great. No, we're a piece up. What am I saying? But white ends up a piece up after all this business. Um, yeah. So I would think the best response to Bishop F7 would be to just hide in the corner and hope that white doesn't have further follow up. But bishop h6, I don't think is bad. I think bishop h6 is just fine. At least it's winning an exchange, it appears. Yep.
Yeah, I feel like Connor at this point, you know, with basically getting upset by UV and then having a draw against Daniel last week, is probably at this point like not wanting. He's got a winning material advantage. He wants to just win and
Yep.
prevent all counterplay. Just get the wheels back on. Um,
Exactly.
so that's
Which is a
I think
good practical approach.
I think I like the way he's playing better than Bishop takes f7 as myself as well. You know, if I'm already up material and I'm seeing a way to continue without sacrificing additional material, let's not go for complications.
No, I think that bishop h6 is probably better than bishop f7. I guess the idea behind bishop h7 f7 just tickled me, so I wanted to look at it.
Yes.
But I think practically, bishop h6, you win material, you hover pieces off the board. What's not to like, right?
Mm-hmm.
The game plays itself after that. So let's see. Oh yeah, that's true. Connor is doing both Connor and Nathan are doing the simul dance here. So this is that last one. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. In some of these games, I think they're keying them in after they're done, so they're not.
Okay.
That's why we're kind of getting extra games. But
Okay. So have we
so
finished all the games for the premiere section?
yeah, I think we finished all the. You know, we are running super light tonight, and we have done all the games in the premiere
Yeah.
section, I believe. So you know,
Okay.
if there's
All
additional
right. So
games
maybe
we
we
didn't
can
cover
sign off
tonight,
here.
yeah, we're gonna sign off tonight, and then you know, if there are additional games we do get loaded into the broadcast or they're submitted to Connor, myself and Connor will try to get to those in some side episodes. But yeah, we'll kind of see if that happens. I know we kind of overpromised, underdelivered last week, so. But yeah, thank you so much, OK, for commentating tonight, and we really appreciate all the coverage of the games. And thanks for coming the past few weeks. It's awesome to have a really strong local player who beats out the weekend tournaments, commentating on the weeknight games. So yeah, we really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
All right, and thank you guys for watching.
So,
We'll see you next week for the finale, and if see if Nathan can close this out with his awesome 3-0 start.